and welcome. Today we're going to be working on a modded item, the Quiver. I'm going to build this thing from scratch all the way up to the state that it's currently in. We're going to try out some different enchantments on it. We're doing this in Java 1.21.4, and I'm just going to try my hardest to try to make something, and it's gonna go for the worst. This thing almost completely ruined me and took so much time that I'll never be the same again. Enjoy this. So let's get right into it. I just went right through and decided to make a recipe for, does that look different, for this item here. So how we decided to go about this, I decided to put 2 bundles in here, wool block, stick, flint up the top, and 2 nuggets here for a texture that hasn't been designed yet or any functionality. But I went for this because I think the bundles are a great way to introduce some more cost with the string and the leather. I want it to still be available for early game, but not too easy, so that it's still an interesting item to get. Speaking of textures, I got one in here for you. It's pretty much a combination between what the bundle looks like and some arrow tips, as well as like their stems there. Next, I want to of course give this a GUI like how the bundle has and implement some of the functionality there. So my friend Flaming Thunder has helped me on some of the other design stuff. I actually took a crack at the Quiver model himself. He made it more I want to say rectangular, but slanted at a different angle, matched the bundle a little better, and I actually got some functionality in here now, because as you can tell, there's no arrows in this model anymore, and that's because it's empty, and this is the interface I made for it. Now, it's not like the bundle interface where you have the different options that appear and you're able to fill it within your inventory, but that's because of the other features I'm looking to add into here, that it's better if it's in this type of GUI instead. Now, it has 9 slots. Each can fit 1 stack of arrows. And as I fill this in here, now that I have 1 arrow in here, you can actually hover over here. It will tell you what arrow you have in there, the stack size. Once you fill up your bag with 9 different types of arrows, then you get the second arrow model in there. Lets you know that your bag is entirely full. And I think these 3 levels of indication to the player are the most useful. That is all set up except for the shooting aspect. Now I got to make it so that we actually take arrows out of there when we shoot bows. So first step to getting some functionality is just being able to detect whenever this is in my inventory and whenever I have one of these 3 bows in my hand. And we can tell by this chat showing up saying replace time, and it's constantly being sent, indicating that these 2 checks are working. If I don't have the Quiver in my inventory, then this stops no matter what. And if I do have the Quiver in my inventory but I'm not holding it, then of course the messages don't show up. But I had to make sure it works for all 3 of these bows, the 2 vanilla ones and the one I introduced a little bit earlier in a different video. So I have a system that's kind of working right now, and I want to show you a little bit about that. So here's a Quiver that is full of all the arrows that you can imagine. So in my custom ones, some of the vanilla arrows, all of that. And when I hover over a bow, it is going to replace that Quiver with the first arrow. Now, of course, I would rather just be able to use it directly from the inventory, but there's some weird things going along with that, specifically with having the vanilla arrows be able to prefer those arrows. So this might be one of the better ways to do it, just to ensure that it works with like most bows. Now, I can shoot this, and I will get a spectral arrow as you see, and in survival, it would actually take from that stack as well. The issue comes with when I scroll back, because it goes back to its Quiver form, except we lose some information, and that is the tipped arrows. I can't keep their potion effects. I got everything else to work. These are the exact same arrow types, the same stack size, as you can tell by like that 16. Even the display names, I could rename these. I could rename the Quiver. That will all stay. We just have that little issue there where I can't seem to be able to get this data up. One take, overlap it with the visuals of the other take. That's good. I will try to make it so the last take is the best take, and it's all gonna be in this one recording. Okay, so it has been 2 full weeks of development later, and I have something that works. But to fully appreciate this jumbled mess of an item, I will need to explain a lot. We're going to need to cover exactly how bows work, some data storage, and why I suck as a programmer. So strap in. Let's start off with how bows complicate everything. The bows in Minecraft have a system to prefer which arrows in the inventory to shoot. They start with the offhand, or if the bow is in the offhand, then in the player's main hand. If no dice, they continue looking for arrows in slot 0 of the inventory, or at the lowest left location, and continue upwards with slot numbers, or towards the right of the inventory. After the hotbar, they start with the topmost row, and move all the way down through the numbers till 35. But most importantly, these are looking for arrows, not quivers, arrows. This is where issue 1 comes from. This search mechanic can be changed with modded bows, but there's no way for a mod to change that code. It's actually against the law for me to alter Minecraft's code, and I can only add to it. Stupid license agreements. So the only option, I think at least, is to give the player an arrow directly from this quiver, which sounds easier than it is. I mean, sure, let's take this arrow out of slot 0 of the quiver and place it in slot 8 of the player's inventory. Oh wait, I had some blocks there. Well, let's go for slot 25. Oh, never mind. Maybe we could place it in the offhand. Can we search for an empty slot somewhere and just put it there? Do they all have items? Really? I won't be the one to make an inventory update. Fine. Well, I'll just have to choose something else. So there's one slot we just haven't looked at yet, and that is the quiver slot. Think about it. You can only use the quiver in your main hand or your offhand. So if you're too busy shooting an arrow, you can't open it. Therefore, it's just sitting around holding junk and collecting dust. This also works well with the arrow search, since you could technically change which quiver you're using by the position of the quiver in your inventory, just like arrows. But wait, the quiver held all of the arrows and their data, and if we place an arrow here instead of the quiver, what will happen to all that data? Well, it's gone, and we're gonna need to move this somewhere. And so it's time for the data storage shenanigans. Welcome to the part where we have to figure out data storage. We are dealing with one item that can store the data for 9 other stacks of items, and it's currently inside of a slot of a player's inventory. That will change later, but let's look at our current options. My first thought, and maybe your first thought, is the player. I can attach data to players in any form with this mod, including straight item stacks. So let's just toss a quiver there and call it quits. Except that some edge cases can get messy. What if the player throws the quiver out of their inventory and their friend picks it up? What if the player dies with the quiver on them? Or what if the quiver is an arrow in either of those cases? We have many problems. I could also just chuck it onto the world data, but that's even more annoying. Or into the file in the world, but that's more work than it has to be. We could go the entity or the block route where we have one in the world and this could hold the quiver for us, but that's still not simple. But you do know what is simple? The only place that we could store data and guarantee it will follow with the quiver's arrow no matter where it goes is on the quiver's arrow. We can add custom data components and store any strings, numbers, or booleans there. The only issue is that it complicates a ton later down the line, but right now this is nice. With that in mind, the only thing a quiver is made out of is 9 item stacks. So I started separating the IDs of these items, the counts, and even display names, since these 3 were easy for my mod editor to grab onto. Then I threw these onto the arrows as tags, 27 at the max, and everything's working great. But wait, what's that? Over there, behind the furnace mine carts and the weighted pressure plates? No! Potion tipped arrows? With component data? Yeah, so potion arrows store their potion type as a component, as all tipped arrows share an item. This means my system will break because I'm not grabbing component data. And this could have happened with other modded arrows too. What's even better is that there's no easy method for my editor to do this either. The only thing supported is a way to copy components from one item stack to another, which means we have to dig it out of the item in a different way. Coming from a data pack enjoyer's mind like mine, my next conceivable option is a quick data get command. Yes, I mixed Minecraft commands with mods. Sue me for making a code tornado. You still get a working quiver out of it, so I don't want to hear it. But grabbing the data out of each stack is slow and inefficient, so I wisened up and realized we just need the data of the entire quiver to get all of the arrows data too. My only option was to run the command as the player and then filter for which quiver I want using inventory slot with a number. Wait. Slot number? Where do I get one of those? Welcome to the first but not the last item search methods I had to make. I decided just as the bow searches for arrows starting at, slot 0 and up like I showed you, I could do the same when looking for quivers to turn into arrows. As this command runs, we grab each item individually from each slot, check if it's a quiver, and then pass that slot number along to the command to get the data. We can slop that onto the arrow, and boom, the quiver is now a part of that arrow. Except, when should we do this? Timing is everything. Well, let's break down the player's actions real quick. Craft a quiver, open it up, place some arrows inside, scroll over to the bow, and fire. But pause right there at the end. For a player to be shooting the bow, they have to be holding it. For a player to open the quiver, they also have to be holding it as well. We've covered this already. So the player cannot wield both, which means it's a perfect window to turn the quivers into arrows when the player is holding a bow, since that's their only chance to shoot it. Wait, this isn't 1.8 anymore. We can forget about the other hand. We'll prefer the bow in this case, since the quiver will turn to an arrow and then they won't be able to open it. This is also easier when figuring out when a player is pulling back a bow, and this also covers crossbows since they consume an arrow arrow once fully pulled back. From there, there's some details I glossed over, like finding the next non-empty slot inside the quiver to be used as an arrow, or removing the arrow stack from the quiver before saving the data. But all those parts were easy. All quivers now become arrows with their data saved, and when the player moves back off of the bow, we just have to reverse to bring the quiver back. That should be easy, right? Well, sort of. I could take a copy of the arrow's item stack and place an empty quiver in its place. That way I could use an item modify command to throw the component data from the arrow storage back on. Lastly, I reinsert that arrow since we removed it from the quiver's data earlier. The arrow could have been renamed, modified, or fired while out there, resulting in different data than before, so it's better to be cautious. All of that only handles switching the quiver into an arrow and back, and there's so many more edge cases to go over. So let's chat all of the edge cases. We'll start with the ones you might run into first. What happens when you run out of arrows and shoot your last one from the quiver? Since we just put all of the quiver's data on the arrow you shot, there is nothing left in its place. Oops, more data loss. Well, that arrow still has the data of the quiver even after being shot, so we can just check for shot arrows and see if there's quiver data. Arrows also have an owner tag containing the player's UUID of who shot it, so we know who to give the quiver to. Nice. So let's just toss a new quiver to the player and throw the original data on and call it a day, right? Well, here's the fun part. Every arrow shot from the quiver contains the quiver data, not just the last one shot. So we have to check the entire player's inventory for an exact copy of the data, because if so, the player has not shot their last arrow yet. From there, we're good to clear that arrow's quiver data since there's no more use for it, and to prevent extra quivers from showing up. Best part is since we already removed the arrow's stack that was within this quiver that we just used, we can automatically pull out the next available arrow for us with the previous code. Another edge case, what if the player throws out their last item in the stack instead of shooting it? Well, we could treat it relatively as an arrow is being shot. We just have to check if the quiver is missing and reinsert the lost quiver. The item stack even has a thrower MBT tag that acts the same as the owner from earlier. The only difference is that extracting data is different. We had to execute data commands in the shot arrow's name, but here I could just treat the thrown item as an item stack and get the data through code instead. Lots of fun. Well, funny that I mention the thrower tag, because here's another edge case. When the player dies while holding a bow, the arrows that drop from the quiver have no thrower tag, so they have nobody to check if they're the last from a stack. That's a quick fix though, since the thrower tag is not present on player death, we can just check for that and always assume that these arrows are the only ones that exist from that specific quiver, and we can repackage those arrows into quivers every time. Ooh, another fun challenge. Quivers have a stack size of 1 per slot, but arrows can have 64 in a stack. Someone could split these stacks across many inventory slots. And how would we know which one to turn into a quiver and which ones to keep as arrows when they're no longer holding the bow? They all have the exact same data. So I had to build a new algorithm to check every arrow with quiver data to see if they have matching data. If so, one thing that will help us here is that the quiver's data contains the information for the original slot that the quiver was in. If there's an arrow in that slot, we should prefer that one to become the quiver. If not, I just decided that the arrow with the highest stack size should become the quiver, because that makes more sense. I would have liked to track the last arrow that the player splits off of the stack and make that one the quiver, but that's way harder to track than what it's worth, because this system alone still took me a couple days to figure out. Remember when I mentioned reinserting arrows into the quiver when the player isn't selecting a bow? Well, there's another problem. Those arrows still had placeholder data because they needed a space to put the quiver's data. But now, if a player tries putting in an arrow with no data, it won't stack, since the new arrows have 0 data. This led me on a bit of a goose chase trying to figure out the best commands to holistically remove the data from the player, which wasn't easy. I had to learn the item modify command, and now we can remove my custom data before reinserting that arrow. And all of that was for this item. But I'm not done, because there's something I developed along with this bow that I intended to use for something. I didn't know what yet. If I shoot this bow, there are some cases where you could pick up the arrow, and now it's going directly into my quiver. And that didn't work before because of the data I described. These arrows, like I said, currently have the data. That's how they say in quiver on them. And these fired out, like I told you, also just had their data cleared, so they wouldn't stack. But I have written a little thing that will take shot arrows as well as thrown arrows and put them back inside. This is a really cool functionality, but I think it's good if we could separate that and force players to get an enchantment. I've made other things that is also in this mod. You don't have to really know much about them, except that I have made an enchantment that I'm making here called Magnetism. Let me just make 2 of those. How it works is for normal tools like an axe. Well, I have to actually have levels for this. Alright, here we go. So throw that on there, and what this will do is anything I mine, it will be brought directly into my inventory instead of being dropped on the ground. So this works out pretty well if I just simply said I can add it to the quiver as well, and then that would allow arrows to automatically go inside the quiver instead of my inventory. And that should be a quick change. Alright, and just like that, arrows shot from a quiver that does not have any enchantment will not go into that quiver whatsoever, as you can see right there. As soon as I enchant this as well, though, you already know it's going to go right back inside no matter what form the quiver's in as well. That works for tossed items as well. So I was thinking about it a little bit more, and I thought of a cool new idea we can do. So obviously bows can only shoot arrows, but crossbows can also shoot firework rockets. The issue is the only way to shoot them is by putting them into the offhand. Then it loads up with fireworks. Otherwise, it will always just take an arrow instead. And right now, firework rockets don't really fit into the quiver, so I want to add a new enchantment that will let us put firework rockets into the quiver, as well as automatically putting these firework rockets into the offhand so it gets loaded in the crossbow. And I'm gonna call this powder keg. Let's work on it. Alright, so I have this all working now. I'm gonna throw powder keg back onto this quiver real quick, and now it can insert firework rockets. Normal quivers won't let you put it in there. I just give it back to the player because there's no way to put it back inside of the cursor of the player. I wish I could do that, but instead I just give it to the player so it go to the next empty slot, and if you have none, it'll be on the ground. If firework rockets are the next to be used from the quiver and I hold it over with a crossbow, it will go automatically into my offhand so I can load this up and shoot off fireworks. And when I swap back, it will go back to where it was originally. If you're holding another item in your offhand, though, like a shield, this will still work well, as it will swap momentarily while you're trying to load and shoot, but it will swap back with that item when you swap off. In fact, this item goes where your quiver was, so it's quite seamless. Some other things I also did is I made this compatible with magnetism as well, as in if you just throw magnetism on here, you can pick up firework rockets directly into the quiver. And now both these enchantments are compatible. That system was way easier to develop with all of the hard work I did previously. I just had to change some things, use some code I've already made, and that did not take long at all. Alright, and with those additions, I think that is a wrap on the quiver. I'm going to work in the next couple days to try to package everything I've just added to this mod called Vanilla Bean, which has been all the arrow stuff, the longbow that I did, as well as the quiver, into a larger update so that maybe you'll be able to play this right now in the description. Check those links out. Of course, if you have any cool ideas and you want to talk to some cool people, check out my Discord server. Then this video was edited by Cinnamon. They're really cool. Check them out. Subscribe to the video if you want to know when I upload future videos, and like to let me know that you want to see more videos like this. And hopefully I will come to see you sooner than before. The reason why this took so long is because developing things just takes long. Like, you could look around and see all of the different things and thought process that had to go into one item. And the reality of the situation is developmental stuff like this can't just come out in a week. But I think I have a solution for that. So let's take a little look over here. I mean, timing is everything. I want to check out what's behind there. What's that noise? What's going on? Do you hear that? Wait, what's going on there? Oh, bro, I was gonna go over there. All right, well, this one's still open. Let's, I guess we're heading back into the warp room. Okay, let's see over here. Let's see if I can get the right coordinates I'm looking for. I have an idea. I still can't turn this computer on. Okay, maybe over here? Yeah, right. Hit those buttons right there, and we're looking good, right? Okay, perfect. So, if you're watching this when it comes out, then you're going to want to check the description and check out my Twitch channel, because that's where we're going to figure out where I'm heading, because it is time to actually get something interesting. I'll see you there. See you then. Goodbye.